Shalom.
Shalom.
Happy Hanukkah.
And to you.
Glad you could make it. I think we're going to be a
Hang on.
couple minutes beyond for Ben.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Emma's not making it. She forgot. Or something came up.
I did post the link in the chat if anyone would like to join and hang out. Otherwise, I will be happy to highlight some of the Peanut Gallery comments as they come in, if they come in. For review, we are reading the Kabbalah of Forgiveness by Henry Abramson, which is a commentary on the 13 levels of mercy in Rabbi Moshe Cordovero's De Palm of Devorah, or Tomer Devorah. And today we are in our, third session where we're reading or discussing the 5th, 6th, and 7th levels. Did you get the reading done, Sandy?
I read.
Mm-hmm. What did you think overall? Maybe compared to the prior 3 levels or 2 levels we did.
5 is hard for me.
The 5th level?
Yeah.
Well, let's dive into the 5th level.
Oh, thanks.
I mean, these levels are hard for everybody, right? I mean...
I know.
I wouldn't feel bad. The 5th level is he does not hold fast to his anger forever. It basically talks about how even when God is angry, in the sense that God can be angry or is angry, maybe definitely differently than we're angry, he still nullifies wrath and extends mercy.
Yeah.
Even if he has the right to punish, or we have the right to punish and rebuke, we should not always exercise that right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a tough one because it's like righteous indignation, which feels like the best kind, right? Where we're in the right and we have the right to yell at people or be mad. It's like justified anger, and that feels good sometimes.
Mm-hmm. I don't like anger.
Yeah.
I get angry sometimes.
Yeah.
What did you think of this chapter?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it felt like a continuation of the previous ones, right? They're all, to me, my impression is that it's like thing, like in the sense that like we're still dealing with forgiveness, mercy, which I get, I guess that's the levels of mercy, of forgiveness, and it's starting to, I think, get fairly subtle in the differences in the levels to me. I mean, just in terms of the aspects are shifting ever so slightly, but they're not wildly different one level to the next. But I also think that
You got to go back and look at 4 again.
Yeah, it feels like these are things where it's like you're not, this isn't a textbook per se where I'm learning facts and figures. It definitely has the quality of needing to contemplate and revisit. It only took me a half an hour, I think, to read through the 3 levels for today, and you can kind of breeze through them, but it's like really it needs repeated reading, some contemplation, and frankly, just things to commit to memory so you can remember them as you go through your life, because so much of this is, I think, practical life application. If possible, or where possible.
It's always possible. It's just a matter of how. And I think that's why I said it's challenging, because this one digs a lot deeper into the challenge for me than the previous one.
Yeah, you mentioned the 4th level. Was there something specific you wanted to refresh?
No, I don't think so. It was just because you had said it's just a continuation of that, and I was thinking, okay, is it?
Well, I guess not literally like the 5th after the 4th, but my impression of the 3 that we read this time felt like they were building on top of the prior ones, which I guess was in the excuse me, in the introduction to something to expect, that they were going to build on each other.
Yeah, no, actually, when I go back and look at it, there is a definite link between. Hi, Ben.
Yeah.
Definite link between 4 and 5, because like when I look at some of the things of how you're supposed to talk about somebody else, and then you go into this one and it's talking about how God moves his anger back, so that it doesn't overwhelm us, but then he calls us to do the same. That's really hard sometimes. Like even in his example with the neighbor with the donkey, he doesn't just dislike the neighbor, he hates him. It's like, this is not a little thing, and I'm like, yeah. I was telling Jonathan I have trouble with this level.
Level 5?
Yeah. And when I glance back, level 4 because of level 5.
Good to see you, Ben. Welcome.
Good to see you too. I like the sweater.
Thanks.
Oi to the.
Oi to the world.
Oi to the world. That's a good one. I have my lucky dreidel here.
Oh yeah.
I've acquired a lucky dreidel this season, so we'll see how long that will last.
The luck or the dreidel?
Yeah. Both, I guess. There might be some correlation there.
Yeah. So we were. We kind of got as far as overall impressions on the 3 levels. We started talking a little bit about the 5th. Yeah, what were your thoughts on this go around?
Yeah. Let me open up all the things. General impression that I had going through, now that we've gone through 7 levels, is that as we go through more of these, it's interesting, it's challenging, but it's also interesting to try to separate each one from the other. Because it feels like it's, wait, didn't we just talk about this? But if my assumption is that these people know what they're talking about, then there must be something here specific that they're talking about. So I think it's interesting to kind of understand that the whole forgiveness process, if you really separate it into 13 levels, then there is so many different things that are involved in it, right? Like controlling your anger, patience, like the sustaining, or there's a better word for that, but all those, like, they're all small pieces of forgiveness. Different channels into it, different levels, obviously. So that was just interesting to just go through that process of trying to figure that out. In general,
I had the same impression of feeling like we've been here before, and that we're kind of circling around the same thing and looking at it from different and, like, subtle perspectives. And it was a quickish read to get through, but sort of, you can tell that it just requires revisiting and, actually turning these things into life lessons and habits and, meditations and reflections, which I think is, like, maybe the challenge and the right outcome of a book like this, since there's not a whole lot of, like, sort of factual knowledge or detail in here, right? It felt like a continuation, though, of the prior 3 levels, right? What did we do? We did 5, 6, 7 today. So we've done 1 through 4. I didn't go back and reread any of that yet, but the impression kind of stuck with me. I thought it was interesting, like, once we got to level 7, though, not to jump too far ahead, but there was more discussion of tshuva, and I thought it kind of interesting that the practical applications on level 7 were very brief. It was just one
Right.
very kind of quick example, and maybe that was all that was required for a practical application. Or, as we get up higher up the levels, the practical applications might be tougher to come by. I don't know. I haven't
peeked either.
Peeked ahead. No spoil. Yeah, spoiler alert. I don't know. Yeah, but maybe we could chat a little bit about. We could just go through an order and talk about the 5th in some detail, and then move on to the 6th and 7th.
That was good.
And of course, at some point, we'll have to summon Trey to jump in and take us in a different direction altogether. Bail us out right when we need it. So, Sandy, did you think the 5th level was, like, significantly more difficult or challenging, or different than the 6th and 7th to you?
Oh, then 6th and 7th, no.
No, you just think, like, we hit a new level of difficulty.
Yeah. In these 3 chapters, we just hit basically my 30 years of questioning to pastors and such. So tell me about forgiveness. What is forgiveness? And in XYZ situation, how does that work? And what are you really asking? And, so no, it was not harder than the other 2. It just kind of hit the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing that, as it's it's obvious. It's obviously also gone. It's continuing to incorporate the spiritual details and examples and stuff as well, which makes it which makes the read more like you need to treat it like you need to. Yeah, it's more poetic, obviously. So you kind of like it's another challenge dynamic that you have with the text of trying to understand it. So I felt that. So these levels felt more Tanya to me. Like I had a more Tanya feeling to me, in terms of trying to struggle with it in that way, but very enlightening as well. And then I think, yeah, especially the fifth is, it was hard to understand what was the practical, like what was the sixth was like really practical, like you had a specific tool or technique, like the avatars of of like the good thing about the person.
Mm-hmm.
But the fifth just felt like, okay, just release. It was just release the anger, and the sense that I get is it's something about maybe. I mean, obviously, the example here, the prime example is God and how He acts with us, and in God you have opposites. He's right. He's perfect in a way where opposites exist. So within anger, like when anger, so within anger you have mercy, whereas for us it's so overwhelming. We have that one direction. So that's why it feels to me so hard to think about it, where we need to be, we kind of embody that and somehow embody different things within us at the same time, or do those counterintuitive moves that are so hard.
What does Tanya feel like to you? You said this feels like Tanya, so.
It feels more cryptic, or like a poem, or like some, or even, I don't know, this obviously there's mass difference, but almost like what was that book? I wouldn't have it here. Like the Beat Generation, there's a book that he writes, and it doesn't, like, there's no periods in it. It just goes on and on and on. I forgot what it is. Big Sur, I think, maybe the book. And it's like a Beat Generation. It's kind of like the poetic stuff. And it's just like prose, but like it just goes on and on and on. And in Tanya, there's this. It also feels like the Alter Rebbe just goes on and on and on in terms of, like, he might be hitting like a very specific idea, a short, like a concise idea, but he needs to go at it for like says the same words and something, like another angle and another angle, and it continues, and it feels like a giant monologue, and somehow you need to tap into it, because it's not something that you can really understand with like a few words that somebody says to you, like here is how the soul works, or here is how you need to do this in order for this to happen. It's more like you really need to like get a whole picture of it. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Ben, are you reading the primary text portion in Hebrew?
I'm also reading that, yeah.
Yeah. And then do you read the English one as well and just kind of compare, or do you just kind of read the one versus the other?
I read them and I compare them, not too deeply.
Sure.
But I do. I mean, it is interesting to see. I sometimes look at like, I'm just curious to see what specific words are in the primary text.
Right. Yeah, because I'm only reading the English, obviously, and so it's like, I don't expect that the translation is going to be like wildly different, and or that, I know all the caveats of reading in translation, Jacob's greatest hits.
Yeah, I mean, there was something in the primary. Now that you say it, that I was like that was interesting, because it wasn't translated exactly. And let me see if it's the fifth. I don't think it's the fifth. I don't think it's the fifth. It might be the sixth. But yeah. We might get to it, and then I can make the comment.
Yeah, no worries. One thing in the 5th level that I did pull out was what seemed like a distinction between just letting go of anger in general,
Mm-hmm.
and then also like letting go in the specific case where you have a right to rebuke or retribution, right? Like there's an injustice that leads to the anger, not just a kind of an anger that's more one-sided or based on one's own proclivities to anger or proneness to anger or whatever. So I think that matters because for some people, like I feel like I can get over things quickly unless I think I'm right, and then I'm much more animated toward acting on anger or what I was saying to Sandy, like righteous indignation.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to like apply here, specifically.
Yeah.
I think when we're quiet, somebody's feeding back, and I'm trying to figure out. Okay, it's Sandy. I think I muted you and it went away. I'll send you something, Sandy, that you might be able to do to fix that. Do you hear it, Ben?
I heard the now. Yeah.
It starts to.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, if we talk, the more we talk, the less that happens. I don't know if you had any thoughts on that, either of you. The sort of the types of anger. I guess either way, we're supposed to let it go, but I find it personally a lot harder to let go of the anger that I think is justified.
Yeah, it's interesting because he says about the donkey, right? Like, I mean, like, yeah, in the text itself, like if I look at the English, it says, even if this anger would be permitted, and then he gives the example about the donkey. And I think he talks about here about like you are the only witness, so you can't take somebody to court over that, because I think it might require like at least 2 witnesses. So you can't do anything about it. You can only hate the person. Just have that kind of like that. That's what the sages were talking about. And I guess maybe the sense there is that, when you see something that somebody does that's wrong, and there's nobody else that has seen it, you might feel like, well, if I don't respond to this, then who's the arbiter of morality? Like, who's gonna, like, how do we make sure that this person doesn't continue acting in this way that will negatively affect other people in the future, right? So you feel like maybe a sense of responsibility to act, to make sure that, okay, we need to just even improve something from your perspective. So I can see how that's like, I can definitely sense how that's something that's very, very hard to do specifically, because there's a feeling of it's not just wrong in terms of like it hurt me, it's wrong, and there's nobody, like, you feel like it's almost a sense of hopelessness in terms of like, who's gonna right this wrong if there's nobody around. Like there has to be something there has to be some kind of reward and punishment, right? That's what we're kind of like. It's a big struggle. Yeah.
Level 6 or more on 5? Sandy, did you have any more you wanted to say around 5?
Probably not. Sorry.
Oh, that's fine. It's pretty personal stuff. I think it's once you get to level.
It's because my mind is racing. You can read the words, but it's like there's 1,000 assumptions of what something like this looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And I have trouble letting go the anger directed at me, not just that which comes out of me. You know, it doesn't go. It doesn't go. You know, so then I look back at last week. You're not supposed to gossip about it. How do you tell somebody that you need help dealing with anger if you're not supposed to tell somebody about somebody else's issue? And how do you let it go if it's not a single incident? And how do you, so, and then the questions just kind of steamroll. So I look at this, I read these chapters several times. This is not a simple lesson.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is until you actually have to use it.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be the same for the next two. And probably the other ones after if he continues writing as well as he does on some of these, because
Yeah, I think that's right.
I think maybe something, I don't know if this is helpful to Sandy, to what you were saying, but I mean, another element specific to this example of the donkey that I know about is that when it says you should help the person, another specific interpretation there in that verse is that you should only help the person if that person is engaging in the act of setting up correcting what was wrong, right? So if you see somebody with their donkey at the side of the road, you need to help with them, is how I think this is how they interpret it, because it says literally with them. So if you're helping somebody and they standing on the side of the road and smoking a cigarette and just waving you to do your thing so I can get going, then you're not part of what the rabbis say is that you're not obligated at that point to actually help, because they're not helping, they're not engaging with that. So yeah,
that's true too. That's not any easier reading that particular word as a woman or a wife either in certain contexts. So because just because, if you're another time, let's go 6, unless you guys want to talk some more about 5.
I think those were all the notes that I had.
Yeah, we could jump up to 6.
Mm-hmm. Let's see.
So this one talks about kindness and specifically acts of kindness, staying the hand of justice.
Mm-hmm.
And in the case of the Jewish people in the story in Ezekiel. Which I didn't remember, but I haven't read that in a while.
I haven't really read Ezekiel. It seems so. Yeah, it seems like it would be so difficult to go into it. That
Yeah.
I'm keeping that for my later years.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to read Ezekiel.
It's a tough one, right? Famously pretty mystical and hard to understand.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody tells you that the whole vision of the chariot is what Kabbalah is based on, it's all there, then it kind of makes me think like I don't like what like there's no way that I will be able to read that vision and get anything out of it because it's just so packed. It will be too overwhelming to engage with directly.
Yeah. I did have to wonder if the chamber of acts of kindness included Gentile acts of kindness as well, but I suppose as long as the Jewish people have enough in that chamber, we're good.
Meaning, can acts of kindness of Gentiles can redeem the Jewish people or the Gentile people?
Well, I guess the Gentile people, like, is there an equivalent kind of economy, or is this something that's specific to the Jewish people and God, right? Like, is it just, it was a curiosity.
I think that it probably exists for Gentiles too, because even for Pharaoh, there are all these stories, and for Pharaoh, I think it's a midrash where he doesn't die. There's a midrash where he doesn't die in the waters, and I think part of that is because of something good that he did. But there are various stories about like the one little good thing that somebody did within their even if they were I'm not even talking about the righteous, let's say the good Gentiles. I'm talking about the Gentiles that prosecuted the Jews. Even within that section, the small good thing that they do redeem them in some way. So I feel like it does exist as well.
I'll take it.
And also, there's a midrash where I think Pharaoh is supposed to be the mayor or the king of Nineveh, in Jonah, and obviously he gets the whole city to do tshuva. They all get redeemed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, it says in the primary text, a person should say, "It is enough for me that this person performs this one kindness," right? Like that one kindness is the thing that should be focused on in order to forgive or to drop anger or wrath.
yeah.
This, of course, has a specific call out about the spousal relationship, which of course is one that rings true, rings pretty relevant for me. Like there's a lot of, in fact, a lot of this, this book generally, applies to, the closer relationships that we have. I think almost more than the random encounters in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
So it was interesting to see the specific kind of example in the primary text about the spousal relationship, and that's called out later in the commentary, but I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's very helpful to it's like that example, that specificity that he brings as well is kind of very helpful in order to make some of these things grounded, which is why what I really appreciate about the book, that it kind of it helps it or attempts to make things grounded in whatever way it's possible. Um, and I had something about.
Oh, you were going to check the Hebrew too.
Oh yeah, the Hebrew. The one thing in the Hebrew that I saw that I didn't see in the translation is that, let's see. The past looked at him and the rings he saw fall. Even though the others saved them. Oh, okay. Well, it does actually say that, but he doesn't. It does actually say that, but he doesn't. He doesn't. There's no commentary on this, but it says, and I think in the text as well, there's other examples of how this pattern appears, where it says, even though they are undeserving, so they see the hand of God, they see the God remembers the kindness, and then he tells the Gabriel, even though they are undeserved, them save them and allow a remnant to remain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now it doesn't save them. He allows a remnant to remain, meaning that he destroyed a lot of them. Is this means to say, right? So, and I think you see, even in the practical examples, you sometimes see that where it doesn't. The fact that you're forgiving doesn't mean that you are not going to let the other person know if, like, that you think you have been wronged, or like how you would want it to be improved or something like that. It's more about the emotion, the controlling your emotions or how you go about it. Like I think even the example with the car, I don't know if maybe the example in the level 6. So obviously in terms of like from what the text says, it's they are saved, but it's not like they went off scot-free. Something happened between those two things. So, and I just found that interesting.
The first page of the commentary, when they're talking about the gradual descent of the will of God through the 4 worlds, is that something you've studied before? That was really interesting. And when I listened to Rabbi Abramson too, talking about it too, yeah, it just hearing it explained sounded really interesting.
Yeah, not in the way that he explained it specifically. It was very insightful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. The example of how, controlled electricity versus lighting, right?
Yeah.
And so without that balance and that proper path, the unmitigated energy is too much. This was an area that I wasn't familiar with, and kind of had to read through quickly. So don't have a lot more to say, but it was, I mean, I understood that metaphor, but I had never put it in terms of, sort of divine justice or the descent through the Sephiroth and all that. So that's.
I think it's similar to what we just discussed in terms of like reading the vision of Ezekiel or reading this and Hasidic stuff.
Yep.
It's like do you want to get the lightning bolt or something that's a little bit more controlled? And actually, something that also this remind me of is just the this thing when you have an idea and you try to make it into a reality. So I mean, this was true to me when I was writing, like just writing like a screenplay or like some like prose, but also in like the product world, if you work as a designer or you work as you have some kind of idea that you want to make into something and it's abstract, and you get some kind of flash of insight. So let me just talk as a writer, right? You get some flash and insight of a character, and a character has certain emotion that you feel, wow, this is going to lead. I can see a whole world here in my head at least. But between that and putting that on paper and then making that into a narrative, like down the four worlds, it's almost never gets, especially not at first, but it almost never gets, you get it right. So and the whole practice of, writing frameworks and writing and editing and all that stuff is how to make the lightning into an electrical system with meters and all that stuff. So I found that. So that's something that I really relate to. From that Kabbalist understand those kind of like examples and visuals are really useful when I think about moments where I had to create something.
Mm-hmm.
Reminds me of do you know the episode in Seinfeld with where Seinfeld wakes up in the middle of the night and he sees Larry David on the screen. Sees Larry David on the screen, and Larry David says something. It's a flaming globes of fire or something. And anyway, Seinfeld writes it down in the middle of the night, thinking this is the best joke I've ever written. Then he wakes up in the morning and he's like, he looks at it in his note and he can't understand what he wrote. And I said, oh, he's trying to figure out what was this joke that was like, he just remembers that he woke up and he was like, this is the best thing. This is, yeah. So reminded me of that.
Yep.
Yeah, the parting thought for me on level 6 is just the last sentence of the chapter, which is, if we wish to master the 6th level of mercy, we must focus on those benefits we receive from others, cultivating gratitude as a perpetual state of mind. Which is like,
right.
I guess another way to approach this level. It's a mercy, it's forgiveness, but it's by having that mindset of gratitude and appreciation for little things that should make it give us like the ability to master this level, right? Like it's like the prereq for coming in to this level. Which is different than like letting go of something. It's more of like having a habit of positive view of gratitude and appreciation, and being able to hone in on, little specific instances if necessary, right? Or just one thing, and just being like, hey, that's going to be the thing I'm going to fixate on to drop the anger or the negative feelings or whatever, and to maybe, forgive
I liked how he talked about it, page 113. It was just after he talked about the lightning bolt and comparing the electricity to the lightning bolt. And then he's saying, so to the channeling of divine energy, when human beings comport themselves properly, the Sephirot remain in their intended alignment. The Sephirot on the left representing justice, Gevurah and Chod, balance. The Sephirot on the right representing mercy, Chesed and Netzach. The right and the left, justice and mercy, are then filtered through the Sephirot that remain in the center. Tiferet and Yesod?
Mm-hmm.
Finally expressing themselves in Malchut. Human choice affects the delicate balance of the Sephirot. In the sixth level of mercy, Rabbi Cordovero mentions a potentially disastrous alignment of the Sephirot occasioned by human transgression. Givarat Malkut, or justice through sovereignty, in which the energy flowing from justice, Givarah, is not mediated by mixing with the powers of mercy through Teferet and Yesod. Rather, it flows directly from its source in Gevurah to its destination, Malchut, wreaking horrible devastation on the world. And that's like the thing we opened with the angel Gabriel wanting to throw all the coals down on the people and on the world. And he's like, no,
Yeah.
you wait, you hold, stay your hand kind of thing.
Yeah, I put the Sefirot up.
That really grabbed that section really grabbed me.
Yeah.
The importance of keeping everything in alignment.
Yeah, and channeling it through in the right way.
Mm-hmm.
I had something. Well, yeah, I mean to what you said, Jonathan, in terms of how it's we need to try to fixate on the positive. I think that we're grateful for, and how I guess it's important to remember how this is like groundwork before that we do just day by day, like before anything comes up, right? Like we just need to make sure that we are aware of the good things that people do to us still, so that we can utilize that later as a tool to, again, maybe mitigate our anger, but also, and this also comes through also from, I think, from the Tanya discussion that I had with Jacob even this week, that there is something about these merciful acts that they're not just avatars of specific acts that maybe your partner did for you. They are also they are a seed, or they're the vision of the potential of what what is the goal of either the goal of the relationship, or the ideal of the relationship. The ideal of the relationship is embodied in those small acts, just like light, like what we discussed in Tanya. Light is the first thing that's created in the world. It's also the purpose of the world. So it's this weird thing when it's the thing at the beginning, and it's the thing at the end. And like in the Tanya, we discussed about how if you're using Torah and you're using it in the way that it's manifests the will of God, which comes from the highest world, you're using it in the ideal way. It's as if you're aligning everything so that you have this like clear channel into the source, which is also the ideal. So you connect all these worlds together. You're in this super flow. So I found those things really, really interesting, and how it was cool to see how they align both, and kind of from this reading and from the discussion on Tanya. But I don't know if anybody's like kind of, this idea sounds familiar. This idea of like the source being the also the ideal.
Wasn't, like, are you saying that in the sense where we started from sort of man's, the point is the Imagio Deo, that we become like God in how we act and how we act upon the world and upon others. And I was thinking that when you were talking about how, it comes down, but then are we part of the lifting it back up again, like returning it to God? Like, is that what we're doing, or is that something else that's being shown here in that, because was it in this chapter that he was talking about humility? There was one where he was talking about humility and its connection to, what's the top one there in the image you just had? Was it the mouth? No. On the bottom is what's on the very top, like that above kind of your head, sort of.
Keter?
Like from the bottom is the humility, but then there's that kind of connection to. Was that in this book, or was that in?
I'm not sure.
I've listened. I know I heard somebody, and I thought it was when I was listening to. I thought it was when I was listening to Henry Abramson teach on this, but I could be. I've listened to about 2 or 3 things this week, so I could be using them.
Yeah.
But it was interesting.
I mean, to what you said, it's interesting because, I mean, I think that you could view, and I think I've heard this before, where part of what we're doing is, there is this bringing down and lifting of things, right? There is the connecting of things. And this is like the primary role that we have. And in a way, what we're doing is that we are manifesting the oneness of God. So there was some kind of tzimtzum in order for us to eventually be able to maybe be so like God and make this world so godly, so that suddenly everything kind of connects, and that's the end, and that's like the end of the story. Because in a very like in a very simplistic way, like we did it, like we connected everything together, like everything is like we manifested the one in a way that is just cannot be, that everybody can see that. So I think there is something in what you said about that.
Unfortunately, it's just this instinctive question. Just looking for something more tangible of what I'm seeing. Yeah. I do think there's something there for sure. Like, it's important.
Mm-hmm.
That bringing down and lifting up.
Yeah.
Should we jump into the final level for the week?
Just a sec. Yeah, I think that's for me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the 7th level where we start to talk a little more about repentance and the sort of paradox of the broken relationship and reconciliation leading to greater connection, or the irony of that even, and using the Hebrew letter Hey and how it's shaped like a covered patio. I thought that was an interesting visualization, and learned a little Hebrew.
Took me a while to figure it out, though. What, like, to visualize it in the right way.
Well, the floor part, right, is like invisible, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you have to. Yeah, I'm not sure that I actually followed. Like, do you kind of go up and over the roof and then through the little entry, through the opening on the left side of the hay?
I think if you're the repentant.
Right.
Yeah, so I think the floor, it's invisible, meaning is that there's not a lot of stuff or fences between us and transgression, meaning that it's very easy to go into that path. But then if you try to climb up through that same way, you're very much likely to fall back down. So what you need to do is, I guess, go through the small side first and stand on top of that, and then climb onto the roof, so that you're really bolstered up and there's a few fences below you.
Right.
So that you've mastered that, and you're also higher than the righteous person who is just standing at the opening right below you.
But having not fallen out to begin with.
Right.
But yet not as high up.
Yeah, where is the hay? In the middle there.
Top middle.
Top middle, yeah. But yeah, this one is better. But yeah.
Yeah. I can still sense some of the explanation that's been told about the shape of the letters. I can't recall it to retell it. But when I look at them, I'm like, how many times have I been told about, the little nose bit on the top of the one, and how, each piece has a meaning, each piece of each letter.
Yeah, it's kind of mind-boggling to come upon all these different ways of understanding things. You kind of think about, like, whoa, how many ways have these people thought about this idea? Like there's all these kind of visuals and stories and word games and mathematical equations and I don't know what. Yeah. And it's very.
But
now we're climbing on haze.
Now we're climbing on haze, yeah.
Yes. Oh, and we have to. Yeah, and we've also missed Trey. Thought it was next week.
Yeah. Sure.
Is next week is already holidays, isn't it?
Next week is December 20, so we're still.
Right. All right. Okay.
Okay, this is an interesting piece, and I don't know if you've come across it in some of the other readings you've done, Ben, but on 129, where he's talking about, so that you place where the penitents stand on the bottom of the previous page and how they mortify themselves and rose up to the higher opening, practicing self-denial, separating from sin so much more than the righteous. But then it says, therefore they rise up and stand up in the level of the hay, the fifth chamber of hay that is in the Garden of Eden. And I'm like, oh, whoa, that's interesting, because you just read what we've been given. people are sent out from the garden. And then everybody talks about how, like, well, where is it? Assuming it's here somewhere, even though we've been sent out away. But this sounds like the actual garden exists somewhere, and I'm like, why does it have a fifth chamber? And what, it's like, it's interesting because I haven't heard it before. And it's kind of, and that when we repent, we bring the hay back into its place, returning the Shekinah to God. And I'm like, that's just, excuse me.
Yeah, so I guess it talks about this, like we said with the metaphor, in terms of talking about this journey of the transgressor and how easy it is to fall into those kind of things, and what you need to do in order to come back. And I guess it mentioned something. Yeah, I need to read this one again. There's a lot in here.
Mm-hmm.
But it was interesting that he was talking about the idea of the fences, specifically, more explicitly in terms of these habits or customs. And obviously this is also like an halachic term in terms of fences around a certain transgression, to make sure that we don't even get near it, or near the supposed transgression, or that we aren't even perceived as doing it, even if we're not doing it. We don't want to even be perceived. And obviously, I mean, even outside of halacha, it's just like a psychological concept, or something that you always kind of like what he mentions about the person addicted to alcohol, in terms of how you need to make those fences, change your habits, change your environment. So that was an interesting. That discussion was very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't have a lot of notes on this one. The distinction between repentance out of love and fear gets talked about a bit. I think what was difficult for me was tying that into the structure of the 13 levels generally, because it seems like this one is a little bit different than previous ones, because it does talk about repentance, fences, adding fences for the righteous versus fences for the less righteous, like the level of fencing required to sort of have a more complete or perfect repentance. So these are themes that I've encountered before, but I guess fitting them into this framework of the 13 levels is maybe not quite as obvious as the others, but still very thought-provoking, and
Yeah.
I mean, there hasn't been a bad level yet. This is a tough but beautiful book so far, I think.
Yeah. He does. I feel like he does say there is something here that kind of like seems to sum up this, to synthesize this level for me at that moment. I'm trying to find this, which makes me feel like, okay, in the journey of forgiveness, like this has to do with this specific thing, and maybe I'll try to find it, but maybe it was about how to process regret. If you forgive somebody, how do you process their regret? Like, how do you handle that? And this is that level in forgiveness, like, because forgiveness doesn't necessarily end with you forgiving the person and maybe that person saying I'm sorry. The question is, how are you going to let that reverberate through your own actions after that? So I feel like that was a good way for him that he pointed that out. I don't know where it was, but it's in my head, so it has to come from somewhere. Right. Yeah. Okay. So in 135, I mean, I can read this whole thing because it's good. It's like, forgiveness, however, should not be confused. This is the middle paragraph. Forgiveness, however, should not be confused with forgetfulness. So this is even before my point. It's just a good point. Sin has lasting consequences that remain even after forgiveness. Scripture illustrates such consequences in the relationships between God and human beings in numerous places. King David, for example, sincerely repented his behavior surrounding Bathsheba and her husband Uriah. But God nevertheless meted out a terrible and permanent punishment through David's offspring. The Torah also sets limits to forgiveness in the example of an unfaithful spouse. Although the couple may reconcile, a single act of infidelity may render their continued marriage impossible. The concept discussed in the 7th level does not shed light on the halachic implications of sin and repentance. And the point that I was making is here, the focus here examines the proper perspective of the one who was wrong. How should a person process the deeply felt regret of the one who committed the betrayal? The 7th level demands that one regard the sincerely repentant person with a paradoxically greater love than ever before.
Yeah, I guess that kind of speaks to my question about how this fits in. So thanks for that. I think, yeah, like in the theme of us imitating God, that's what this level's about, is in the tshuva situation between man and God. Only in the situation between man and man is where we sort of play the quote unquote God role. And that's what this level requires of us, is to imitate God in the same way that he deals with us.
Where that's possible. Where that's possible. Which is true to all levels, but yeah.
Yeah, in the way that we can imitate it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons it grabs so deeply. Is there's this, in any of the lessons I've heard here, there's that very it's like it's true, but it's also, you know, to the degree that you can, whatever. Which really contrasts hard with some of my questions in the past about things, which seem to have very black and white answers. You know, it's, you are required to forgive. No discussion of what it means or looks like. You simply must, you know, and or, you know, well, this or that. Even we get to this one where it's talking about the difficulty of forgetting. You know, there's forgiving, but then the forgetting is so hard. There's a real acknowledgement of what it looks like to be growing in this place, and that there is a real difficulty to actually moving through the levels. You know, it costs to get to where you want to go. And I appreciate it. So when I'm reading it, like, I really appreciate it because it acknowledges that it isn't just hey, I'm telling you, you have to do this, therefore this is simple, go do it.
Yeah, that's something that I really appreciate as well.
Mm-hmm.
As I've learned more and more about these things, is that it, in a very simplistic way, it seems like people have really thought this through. People are really thinking this through, and they're thinking, okay, like, so here's an ideal, here's an example, but here are all the edge cases, or here are the different trade-offs that we might need to make, and here's what can be considered more important or less important, and so that can guide you in any particular situation. Because I mean, that was also something that we discussed in the Tanya that was really interesting, in terms of how in the Tanya was saying that the oral Torah is of the highest world. So if we have these four worlds, the stories, I'm afraid to simplify this too much, but let's just say that the oral Torah is of the highest world. And the reason for that is because it requires us to really understand the principles behind the stories. So not what happened in the story, like the black and white that happened in the story, but the principles of what the stories are trying to teach us, so that we can embody that in the world, in whatever situation comes to us, right? Or we find ourselves in. So, and I think this is also what this book is trying to give us, is like, I'm really trying to get you to understand a principle, or these various different principles, and it's not going to tell you how to act in one particular case, but it's going to give you the tools to understand how to act in multiple cases, and when to weigh things against the other.
And spend your whole life learning this. Because every time you understand it in one situation, you run into another one and you get to rethink it.
Right. I mean, I like Vervaeke's. Doesn't Vervaeke have a definition of sacred, which is the thing that you can come back to and learn from every time you read it? Like, you just find out something new.
That's beautiful too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, folks, I've reached that end. Any final thoughts from the group? We have 5 levels to go. Let's see, how many pages is that? We should figure out for next time.
Let's see what we got here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe we should, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, I mean, the conclusion at the end of 13, we can tack that on.
Yeah.
Are we trying to do this bi-weekly, or is it just kind of based on what the next avoidance of a Jewish holiday?
I mean, there's not a lot coming up. So let's see what we got here. So the next one should be, if we're doing it, I mean, bi-weekly was original intention, right? So it should be the 27th.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. And check my work schedule.
Then the 27th is the third.
27th, my work schedule is still cooperating with it. Yay.
Uh, 27th is not good. Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, that's right in the holiday, so I don't know if maybe if we want to play it safe, we can do.
Definitely could just push out to the 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
In which case we can adjourn book club for the year.
Whoa.
At least our Gregorian calendar,
Mm-hmm.
the Goyish year. Let's do the 3rd, because I think next week is too quick. The following week is too gnarly. Things go back to normal after the 1st.
Yeah.
So I would be happy to do the next 3 on the 3rd.
Cindy, how's your schedule? Still cooperating?
We'll find out. I'm looking to see if they've given me. I don't think I've got my hours for that week yet, but so far they've been on cue. So
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, I'm pretty flexible. Probably starting Tuesday. Like really, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Any of those nights could work at the same time.
yeah, the Wednesday's been pretty good so far, but any of them should be fine. And most of my work has been ending at 8. Even if it ends at 9, I can just join late. So
Okay.
So we'll assume that that's a good day for now.
All right. Well, I will go ahead and end the stream.
Awesome.
Good.
It was
All
fun.
right. So long.